Welcome, listeners of Illusion, to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode Nightmare Retrospective podcast. I'm Martin Harder, and I'm extremely useful and extremely difficult to use.
And I'm Martin O'Donnell.
I'm running this place now. I'm David Newton. You might recognise me from YouTube, but you probably won't.
Good to see you, David. I'm sure the other bloke will be okay. He's tougher than he looks. So, as well as being, amongst other things, a talented YouTuber, coder, and Doom modder, which is where I know you from, David is also one of the keepers of the Book of Quests on our Patreon.
Yes, and let me say what an honour it is to have been able to bribe my way onto the podcast. Yeah, I do a lot of things. I'm on the retro DOS part of YouTube. I'm writing music. I'm in the Doom fandom. I'm basically just making things and firing them onto the internet in a desperate bid for someone to validate my existence, as we all do.
It's quite funny, actually, because I saw that you had joined our Patreon, but I didn't know who you were. And I suddenly realised I've been watching your videos for a couple of years.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that's who it is.
In particular, you're stumbling through I can't never pronounce it right. Apogee?
Apogee. Yes. Yeah, they called themselves 3D Realms later, so they got easier to pronounce. Yes, and that was a look back at all of the games that they released from, I think, 1989 or 1987, maybe, all the way up to when they stopped releasing games for DOS.
And there's also the Epic Mega Games videos as well. I remember back in the early years of the internet being on CompuServe and everyone was talking about ZZT, and I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, ZZT was definitely my life in the early days of the... when I got onto the internet, which was 2000 or 2002, because I lived in Scotland and all our telephone equipment was built of bits of mud and twigs. That was a really big thing in my life. So were Apogee, so were 3D Realms, and so was Nightmare at that time. And I think all of those together kind of influenced how I write games.
You're a coder as well, aren't you?
I am. In my daily life, I just write boring business software. I had a couple of mild hits in the early 2000s when the independent game community was really starting to get going. There was one called Treasure Tower, which got quite popular, I think, relatively speaking.
I remember Treasure Tower.
You remember Treasure Tower?
Oh, yes.
I can't believe people actually play these things. And Treasure Tower started off as a Nightmare fan game.
Oh, really?
It did. The idea of having to race through rooms and pick up stuff and get obstacles and get food, and all against the clock. Originally, I was going to use a recording of the Life Force clock, but I found I couldn't find a way to quickly display an AVI and wind it to the right place. So that went out the window, and I used my own kind of stylized clock instead.
That's kind of like the problem they had in the program, really, isn't it? Because the Life Force clock was linear, which is why it later changed to a marching knight, slowly revealing the skeleton.
Yeah, so that whole game, Treasure Tower, was based on Nightmare.
Awesome. Is there a place online that people can download it at the moment?
Well, my site is teamouse.net.
Today we're looking at Series 3, Episode 4. This episode was initially broadcast on CITV on Friday the 29th of September 1989. Was still number 1 in the singles charts, and Dead Poets Society continued to top the box office. Now, I hope you've got something to say about Dead Poets Society, because I have not seen it still.
Yes, I've got something to say. I have never seen Dead Poets Society.
Oh, this is going to be the new Untouchables, isn't it?
It is, and I've got my sticker here, just very handily placed.
Oh, of course, because you were one of the original Patreon backers who received the now limited edition, because you can't get them anymore. I've never seen the Untouchables stickers.
Yeah, the great thing was, at work on a conference call, just a couple of days after I got it, somebody mentioned the Untouchables and was asking, has anyone seen it? And I could pull out my sticker. No, officially, I've never seen the Untouchables.
I have now seen the Untouchables.
Is it any good?
I can confidently say it's okay.
Okay.
And now time turns, the recording light burns, timeout is gone, the podcast is on.
Welcome, curious ones. Draw near my fire, for though the last of the summer is still with you, winter is with me, and the dungeon can be a cold and forbidding place. Some, of course, cannot be deterred, And already they venture here before you. Look back in time with me, and let's learn their progress. From Suffolk came 4 strapping boys. To them the goblins seemed like toys. But though they made a clansman prance, they showed no mercy with their dance. And without Gaelic muscle power, their quest, quite suddenly, turned sour. But now a Sussex challenge rings. Their search is for the crown of kings. For here come Simon and his chums. They're making friends and having fun. Now Simon's leapt to level 2. But where on earth has he leapt to?
We begin with the Dungeon Ditty. Boys and toys. Not bad. Prance and dance.
It rhymes.
Power and sour is actually quite a good one, I think. Rings and kings. Bit obvious. Chums and fun.
Becoming more dodgy.
Yeah. And then 2 and 2. So it kind of all falls apart at the end, really, doesn't it?
Honestly, this podcast has completely changed how I write music. I feel really self-conscious now because I use power rhyme on a lot of occasions. When writing lyrics now, I pause and think, oh, the Night Martins aren't going to like this. Which has really slowed me down.
I would apologise, but I don't mean it.
Where am I? You're in a room, Simon, and there's these 2 spears coming into the middle.
Oh, well, I must say I think Simon might have had a better landing. But at least he's still breathing. Better make sure he stays that way.
Simon stepped off the spin dizzy and straight into the Hall of Spears. It's the first appearance of the Hall in this series, and it's great to see it returning in its modified form.
Right, Simon.
Oh dear, we seem to have a haunting too.
The Hall of Spears seems to me to be a prototype of the Corridor of Blades. I should explain that I started watching Nightmare in Series 4, but my first glimpse of it was a fragment of a Series 3 episode that had been left at the end of a tape somewhere, but I really started watching it in Series 4. So it's been really interesting to go back during these podcasts and watch the earlier ones, which I'd never seen before, and see where all the ideas that I'm familiar with came from. So yeah, Hall of Spears seems to be very much like Corridor of Blades, just a small 2-stage room. It's a timing puzzle. It's quite simple. They've edited the room a bit this time to cut away some of the bricks, make it look more overgrown and more ruined. And that's something I've been noticing they've been doing more and more throughout Series 2 and 3, that they would cut up existing rooms and they would move the graphics around and form new ones. And that's been really fascinating to watch as well.
It kind of gives it a bit more of a steampunk feel, where you can see the cogs working and everything. And we had this theory that the Mills of Doom are actually operating in the Corridor of Spears.
That would be good, yeah.
The presence of a skull haunting causes more tension than actual threat, as it doesn't appear to make any real attempt to impede the team's progress. They manage to pass both sets of spears without incident and head through the door. This is something they're doing with increasing regularity, introducing the hauntings and then just having them not do anything. They kind of started it last series. And
Tim Childs just waving his mouse cursor around in the corner of the room. I do like the misshapen skulls, though. They look really uncomfortable and weird, and there's something about lo-fi visuals that seems scarier than better ones sometimes.
Yeah, they are unsettling, aren't they? But the whole thing with the hauntings, it kind of comes to a head, literally, later on in this episode, when one of the hauntings actually does something, but it doesn't actually seem to matter.
Right, when I run, I won't tell you I want you to run again. Right, run! Where am I? Well, Simon, you're in this room, and there's a table with 3 objects, and I don't know what they are, I can't see them, and there's some stairs directly in front of you.
Always love the level 2 clue room. It's the best place.
It's a really nice painting.
Simon stands at the top of the stairs leading into the level 2 clue room. It's nice to see it return in this series, and it remains one of the most beautiful places of architecture in the dungeon. The team guides Simon down the stairs, using the banister, and to the altar, upon which are a carrot and an amulet. The carrot gets knapsacked, and when Simon picks up the bracelet, he disappears, leaving a twinkling star in his place.
Ah, yes, an amulet of invisibility. These things have been found before. They're both extremely useful and extremely difficult to use.
This is a better implication of the amulet of invisibility, I think, than when it was used before. Because at least you can now see where the Dungeoneer is, even if you can't tell which direction he's facing.
Yeah, you would think that would make it a lot easier, but we'll see it maybe isn't. It's certainly better for the viewers being able to see even remotely where the Dungeoneer is.
I like how much Mark is kind of like, he's proper into it, isn't he? Like, he picks up the amulet, just the genuine shock.
Yeah, and I'm so impressed that they could do all this live to them, that there wasn't a heap of setting up and tearing down, especially with an Amiga upstairs.
Because we do know from talking to Hugo a few weeks ago that it was actually filmed as live. A lot of the things sort of happening, it was the first time he had actually seen them. So anytime like he's given them a clue for the riddles and stuff, he doesn't actually know the answer ahead of time.
Yeah, that was incredible to learn.
It gives it more of a natural flow.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just stunned at how well Nightmare works. When you're a child, you don't realise all this setup behind the scenes, but the way that it worked as well, it did it with everybody ad-libbing, it's just incredible.
The team discuss for way too long whether or not to take the amulet. It's literally the only thing there. Of course you're going to take it. And as they do discuss it...
Out quickly, I think. A presence is beginning to manifest itself, and it's not a pleasant
Simon,
one.
put the amulet down. No, Simon, put it in your
Simon,
knapsack.
walk forward.
He can't.
I'm in front of the table.
Get him out.
Turn round.
And they go into an absolute panicked chaos. They really are mashing the controller here, so to speak. Go left, go right, put it in the knapsack. Take it out of the knapsack, drop the knapsack, pick it up, turn round, threaten the face with a carrot. It's mayhem, and they just panic all over the place. All this while a new face begins to appear in the corner of the room, which we will become well acquainted with in time. Once the team eventually gets out of the room, they find which way Simon is facing. They eventually guide him to the exit.
It's almost as if they did it by accident, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. And I'm actually wondering if there was some editing there, because at one point he's facing one way and then they stop him and tell him to start again, and he's going completely opposite direction.
Yeah.
But by some miracle, they get him over to the left-hand side of the room eventually, but it's not by any kind of skill on their part.
And once again, this is an effect that I never questioned the fact that he just turned into a shimmering star as a kid. And it's only as an adult I'm looking at it, and it's clearly... It's even got the flicker of an Amiga mouse pointer.
It's very nostalgic.
Where am I?
Quiet, Simon. Don't speak. There are goblins in the level. You can speak to him, team, but Simon mustn't answer.
Simon, there are 2 goblins in there, and they're stalking around, so just stand still.
We first saw Death Valley in the previous episode. Whilst it's not really a valley, well, not this part anyway, that's the name it's been given by Nighties, so that's what we're going to go with for the podcast. 2 goblins are stalking the area, looking for intruders, but thanks to the amulet, they can't see Simon. The team guide him around them, and once the goblins leave, the team checks Simon's position by getting him to put the amulet down.
Right, stop. Put the amulet down. Fine, you're right. Pick it up again. Right. Pick it up again.
Now, he's facing in a perfect position to walk out the exit here.
He is. So what happens?
The exit is indicated by a shaft of light.
Yeah.
It's not completely clear.
I would agree with that, yeah.
It's clear enough to know that there's something there, and it's definitely clear that the only other exit is a great big cliff.
Yeah, surely that's not going to come into play.
No, of course not.
It's all the way over there. They'll never go to it.
Even as a child, I think this part had the entire viewership just collectively face-palming.
Yeah, what happens?
He's facing in exactly the right direction he needs to be. Mark then turns him round and walks him off a cliff.
Turn round to your right a bit. Right, walk forward. Right, stop. Right, sidestep to your right.
Ooh, nasty.
Now, just in case you didn't know, team, that wasn't a shooting star. It was your friend Simon
taking the big leap. And as you've guided him out of the game, I'll just have to do the same for you. Spellcasting. DISMISS.
This was an amazing episode to happen to land on and just watch. Because this should be much more famous. This should be a much more famous room in Nightmare. It's because for most deaths in Nightmare, they might be slightly stupid, but they've at least been caused by something that I considered as a possible obstacle. The ledge is all the way at the back of the room. You'd really have to be trying to get over there. And I think they must have assumed that there was a path going into the distance. And they're safe anyway. They don't need to be invisible. But maybe they would have gone to another cave screen with goblins if they'd got that far. I find myself wondering what the advisors saw. We get a little animation of the mouse cursor just jumping off the cliff to the valley of death below. And I wonder if they just got the star sinking under the floor, or they saw that entire other scene. Because if I were running the game, I would probably not have anticipated this as an option.
Yeah.
And I would have had to quick come up with something.
We're like, get David on the phone. David, draw something. We've got him on the next episode.
Oh, that is incredible. I'm just a practice, David. This is... Oh, wow. I love that you've got so many people who were involved in this program. When we grew up, all these people only existed on television. And there was no way to get in touch with them. But now you can just send a message straight to Hugo Myatt or Stuart Letherland or Stephen Fry or John Romero, and they're just there. My wife told me while I was on this to just casually drop in at least one time where I say, well, in my experience working with Hugo Myatt, that name drop is something that you can share now.
When did you work with Hugo?
Oh, did you not know? I have a band called Albion. Well, band might be overselling it a bit because we've never met each other or performed together, where I write pretentious metal opera stuff that's sort of fantasy adjacent sometimes. My entry on Metal Archives, if you look that up, it lists Albion's theme as concept albums based on literature, which is technically correct, but you'd think they could have tried to make me sound slightly less of a wanker. So I was writing this thing in 2020, and I needed a part with narration, and I didn't sound right for it. So somehow I went from that to, let's see if Traegard will do it. For a long time, actually, I thought he would be perfect for this, because I love his series introductions. And it's a trope in the pretentious metal world to have someone who sounds like Christopher Lee provide the storyline bits. And I thought his voice would be perfect for that. So before I could engage my brain and stop myself, I found his agent and emailed them. And a couple of days later, this very nice woman, Jane, at the agency, said, yes, send us over a script and we'll have a look. And I had to reply back saying, okay, I'm going to have to get back to you. I wasn't expecting you to say yes, and I haven't really thought this far ahead. But eventually, I sent it over, I got a recording, and now Traegard himself appears as the conductor on The Day the Night Slept, which is available on Bandcamp, and exactly one music shop in Osaka. I thought you knew all that.
No, and the craziest thing is, I actually have heard of Albion.
You have?
Yeah.
If you go to albion.bandcamp.com just now and just click the first track, it's called All Aboard.
Awakened by the eclipse, the path to a new kingdom comes to life in the blackened sky. The bridge of stars awaits those who dare to take the journey. So, climb aboard, the train is ready to depart. We will cross the Global River. We will follow the obsidian map into the world of shadow.
That was really what got me back into Nightmare, and at the same time, your podcast started up. So that it reignited my my Nightmare fandom again.
It's always nice when we hear that we've reinvigorated people's memories of the show.
Oh, definitely.
We had a similar thing with Under Consultation. When I decided I wanted to do this podcast, the first thing I did was email the guys at Under Consultation and say, can we steal your format?
There's so many things that I need to listen to now. I hardly really paid attention to what podcasts were available on Apple or whatever it is. But yeah, there are all these things that I used to be fans of that people are still keeping going. I mean, I saw someone recently say about something that I'm not just a fan, I am the entire air conditioner.
That's a great line.
I know, I thought that I was a mega fan of Nightmare before I found you. And just all the audio plays and fan works and everything that's come out of it that I didn't know about it is incredible that there's this community keeping it alive. I sent that track to my brother when I finished it and said, hey, listen to this. And he said, oh, it sounds almost like a series introduction from Nightmare. I said, well, have I got a bombshell for you?
This would be the first time an advisor would direct a dungeoneer named Simon directly into a deep pit, but it wouldn't be the last.
No. We all know Sidestep to Your Left, but I think this one deserves a lot more fame than it has as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This team, they're not a good team.
Like you mentioned, it's hard to be down on the 8 or 9-year-olds or whatever they are. But they weren't even all that great at guiding him when he was visible. So they definitely didn't have a lot of dexterity when not able to see him.
Advisor Mark's tendency to use 17 words when 3 will do.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same problem. But you really need to be quick and direct when you're guiding someone over a cliff.
Yeah. At least it's an entertaining death.
It is. And why else would you watch Nightmare except to watch children die in entertaining ways?
Exactly.
It's something that I didn't realise other countries didn't really have. In the UK, we have quite a long history of game shows where the chance of survival was not 100%. Where we have Nightmare and Scavengers and the Adventure Game and probably loads of the Incredible Games, which I know a lot of people were scared of with the Dark Knight on the chessboard.
Even the new series of Games Master. If you don't complete the challenges, they're killing you. You're being dumped into a pool of molten metal.
Yeah, in this unholy cathedral, which is the home of Trevor McDonald. It's impossible to describe UK programs to Americans because they think surely this must be Japanese television or something equally, a country that we consider equally bizarre. Mm-hmm. I tried to explain to someone that on Saturday mornings, there used to be a game where they got a dwarf to run at one of 5 doors, except 4 of them are nailed shut.
I've been getting really confused as to what year it is recently, to be honest. Because I spent my Sunday mornings talking about Nightmare, and then watching the new episodes of Games Master, and I've just been to the cinema to see Ghostbusters.
I appreciate it. It's like everyone collectively decided, with the Crystal Bay revival as well, quite recently.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's like everyone's decided, everything's terrible. Let's just do everything in the 90s again.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it.
Spellcasting. DISMISS. So farewell, Simon, Mark, Claire, and Deborah. Your quest is done. So now we prepare for the next one. Enter, stranger. Well, I suppose you're no stranger than the last one. How are you named?
Leo Smith.
Well spoken. Now let's see if you're well supported. Call your advisors, please.
The next Dungeoneer is one of my favourites from this series, to be honest. Leo Smith. He's joined by advisors Matthew, Simon and James, and they all hail from Bromley. Absolutely no rules rundown anymore, because it's Series 3, and if you don't know the rules by now, quite frankly, you shouldn't be on the show. Treguard literally just bungs the helmet on Leo's head and yeets him through the door.
I did notice, though, that he explicitly said, do not take the weapons of your enemies, which was something that was missing from, I know that Stuart Leatherland's team said that they were never given that instruction. I really appreciate that it's been sped up. You don't need to have the entire rules rundown anymore.
Yes.
That's quite important.
It's just that it's literally gone from overlong to nothing. Yeah, he's just like, you read the leaflet. Go on, get in there.
Turn now and face the dungeon door. For timeout is gone. The quest is on.
am I?
You're in a large green room, and in front of you, there's a table with sides and a dice sitting there in the corner.
This is your adventure, team, and your actions will determine what happens. However, failure to act means nothing happens.
The same dice rooms every other time, and exactly the same thing happens. So with that in mind, we contacted Fiverr user Venturals and asked them to create a jingle for us so we don't ever have to talk about it again.
Welcome to the dungeon. This is season 3. Everything is still the same. Our talking is mundane. We try to make it seem random. Our dice is on the exact same number. We'd better play the game. We'd better play and never talk about it. So welcome to the dungeon.
Oh, the ukulele, that was great. I think that's a fair thing to substitute any discussion with, because I don't like the dice much. It is impressive. I appreciate the big 3D rendered dice that they were showing off. The computer graphics took a step forward in this series. But it is so repetitive. It's not very exciting. You don't see the dice rolling on the table or anything. And later on, I think they got much more impressive, much more physical starting rooms.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a cave, and in front of you, there's a cliff. And then to both sides of you, there is a passageway.
Yeah.
But in the middle of these, there's fire coming up through cracks.
Okay.
Not the most welcoming of beginnings. I suggest you take immediate steps to leave this place, but make sure you don't scorch your dungeoneer while you're doing it.
And they get into the Scarab Room, which is making its first appearance in Series 3. This is the fiery obstacle rooms with the flames going up on either side and through the cavern. And it looks impressive, but it is just a simple timing puzzle. There is a skull haunting, which is apparently the ghost of a previous dungeoneer. The first hint that we've got that the previous dungeoneers hang around and their squashed corpses become these misshapen skulls. Simon, which we'll call him, is floating menacingly in front of the right-hand passage. So the team guide Leo towards the path on the left, but the skull follows them and it blocks off the exit. And they then continue to just go forward anyway, and the haunting politely steps aside and lets them pass.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they were planning to do if it didn't. Maybe they were going to crawl under it or something. The other thing is, I think maybe this was edited for time, and there had been bits with the haunting actually just going back and forth between the doors.
I thought that as well, that I was anticipating it moving to the right again and they would move forward, which it did. But I would definitely have chosen the right-hand door that did not have a skull over it. Tinchild's mouse cursor is getting work out this episode.
Okay, keep on going forward.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a room with 4 doors. And then in the middle of the room, there is like a door.
No, stay where you are and listen. If your name's Leo, then I've got a very special warning for you.
We're in the old 4-door chamber, although technically I guess you could call it a 5-door chamber now. A large trapdoor with a wooden cover now takes up the majority of the floor, and a very animated Melisandre is pacing around the room as she talks. It doesn't really take a genius to work out what happens next.
You've got to remember exactly what I say, or you're likely to come undone. That's when you end up in bits, you know. Now, here's your message. When you meet the moving wall, you mustn't, whatever you...
Hello. That happened to me once.
Oh dear. Someone, it seems, didn't want Melisandre to give you that warning. By the way, don't worry about Melly. She's not nearly as fragile as she looks. I doubt if that fall did her any harm. But take care you don't follow. It wouldn't do Leo any good at all.
And just because I know someone will complain if I don't make this reference. Leo's quite keen on getting involved. He's shaped up to be quite a decisive dungeoneer.
Yes, I do love that when dungeoneers are actually involved in the quest and they're not just avatars to be guided around. And it really helps when they're decisive like that as well. They'll take initiative. It speeds things up so much.
Leo asks what's in the room, and the advisors reply that there is an open trapdoor which must be avoided. Tregor prompts them to say what That's odd, isn't it?
Well, it's a nondescript room by design so that they could paste whatever they needed into it and have different obstacles.
Yeah.
It's a room, it's got doors. There's nothing else to say.
And they guide Leo out through the far right door.
Warning, team. Leo must keep moving, but keep your eyes peeled for a possible exit. Dwarf tunnels are also used by goblins.
Right, Leo, you're walking down a long corridor, and to either side of you, there are doors. You just keep on going.
Hurry, team. I've detected footsteps behind Leo, and they appear to be gaining.
Forwards, quickly. Forwards, quick. Okay, I'm going.
I love this. Okay, I'm going.
These transition dwarf tunnels feel like the precursor to the eye shield sequences later on. They're sort of a filler to make the dungeon seem bigger and like you're not just going from room to room. I also had the thought that they could be inserted anywhere to very slightly lengthen an episode if it was needed.
Yeah.
Which I think might have been a handy editing trick. Again, the computer graphics for the dwarf tunnels, they took a step forward in this series. I think you said earlier that people see series 1, 2, and 3 as one package, but that really series 3 has a lot of changes and it stands more on its own. They were beginning to experiment a lot more.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a red room, and to the left and the right of you, at the back, there are doors.
Yeah.
And then in front of you, there's a table with some objects on it.
Okay.
And they are a jester's wand, a bar of gold, a bun, and a key.
Objects of interest here, team, but first, food for energy.
So I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. But Leo has emerged in Brangwen's clue room. I cannot say it. I apologise. But I'm going to constantly mispronounce it. Leo has emerged in Brangwen's clue room. He approaches the table and knapsacks the bread roll, which in turn causes Brangwen to disappear.
You were worried about this being too early for me.
Which in turn causes Brangwen to appear.
Yeah.
Thievery. Who robs the Brangwen she? Come, answer, small flesh-bound creature.
Brangwen she was in the first glimpse that I ever got of Nightmare, that fragment that I saw at the end of the tape, and I'm pretty sure I find her profoundly terrifying. It's like what I said about lo-fi visuals earlier, where you have this sort of animated face that's it has the eye position twitching about and it's not quite right, and then you slap a human mouth on it and it just looks so uncanny and wrong.
Yeah, what's the technique called? I keep wanting to call it Ultravox, but that's not right.
Yeah, I heard you mention it, and I forgot to look it up before we did this. I was fairly certain it was just a recording of a human mouth that had been green screened in.
Synchrovox, that was it.
Uh-huh.
The technique was probably most famously used in Clutch Cargo, but it is unnerving, isn't it?
It really is. Oakley, who appears in the next series, I think is the worst of them. He looks absolutely hideous.
Yes.
But yeah, this always makes me quite uncomfortable.
Still, it's probably better than the foam masks.
Yes.
Extreme caution, team. This guardian must be treated with respect. Quick, Leo, turn and face her.
Turn and face her.
3 riddles have I, and truth I seek. Answer me fair and not foul, and further knowledge will be yours.
All right, the questions are...
You don't have to do the accent.
I'm going to try. In ancient Greece, a young maid challenged the goddess Athena to a weaving and spinning competition. The goddess was so angered by her defeat that she turned the girl into a different creature. The girl's name was Arachne. What creature did she become?
That was very good.
Thank you.
I think this was probably obvious even when we were kids.
Yeah, it wasn't obvious to me until that girl's name was Arachne, because I didn't know the myth. But otherwise, I am amazed at the level of riddles that these children can answer. I don't think I knew anything about this mythology at that age, and I would probably have got it from Arachne, but I can't tell for sure.
It goes from something simple, like this basically, what is another name for a spider? Arachnid. And then something like that to questions about Saladin.
Yes. Yeah, particularly in these early series, the riddles are all along the lines of who was the fifth knight along from King Arthur at the Round Table counting anti-clockwise.
Series 3 is really where the riddles got, like, there was no room for failure. Usually if you didn't get all 3 riddles, you were dead. Anyway, they did get this one right. It was a spider.
Before the fast of Lent, all stocks of eggs and flour and butter must be spent. Sorry, I became a bit Welsh there. A cake they cook to use the larder up. Name now the cake on which they sup.
It's obviously a pancake. They get that right as well. And on to the third riddle.
This one's a bit simpler. What name do you give to a footprint in a rock?
There's a brief discussion. The answer is fossil, and the truth is accepted. Traeger didn't need to give them any clues.
No, they're really impressive here. I was wondering whether a footprint can be a fossil, because I thought you would have to leave your entire foot behind and have it cast to count as a fossil. But yeah, fossil track, an ichnight. I've looked on Wikipedia, and a footprint can be a fossil.
Yes. The team score a perfect 3. Brangwen tells them that the quest is for the chalice, but they may not drink. She also tells them that locked doors lie ahead. Traegard reminds them that they may command her, and doing so gives them the following information.
Fool's gold is soon frittered. Laughter may sustain you.
And with that, the mysterious guardian vanishes. Leo announces that his intention is to take a wand, or marotte, or if you're Mr. Adoni, folderol. So the team agree with Leo's decision. This is another instance of why I like Leo so much as a Dungeoneer. He just basically says, yeah, this is what I'm taking. Do you agree?
Like all Dungeoneers, he's working with the same information the advisors are. And they don't have to relay Traeger's advice in 3 steps. Like Sigourney Weaver in Galaxy Quest, where her job is to take the question, talk to the computer gives her the answer, she sends it back to the crew. The middleman is cut out here, and again, it's really good, it's really quick.
Yeah, and it's probably a good thing he's so decisive, at least based on this manoeuvring here.
Okay, turn around again. Yeah, right, yeah. Walk forward. Okay, turn around. Sorry, turn left. Okay, stop. Turn right around, 180 degrees. Yeah, right, okay, walk forward.
Yeah, I think just stepping in a random direction and committing to it might have been faster.
I'm not sure if it's Traeger chuckling or Hugo.
Yeah, and like you said, they needed 3 correct answers to be sure of which items to take here.
Eventually, they get out of the room.
Hooray!
Where am I?
Right, you're in a room, and there's a scorpion in the middle of the room, and then in front of you are 2 doors, one with a lock on it, and the other one there's all broken down with rubble in it. Also,
the time your
right,
Dungeoneers escaped with care, team, this creature may not quite exist in the usual sense, but its sting is nonetheless deadly.
also, to your right, there's a hole in the wall and in the floor.
And they head into the Scorpion Room. Being Series 3, this is the version of the room with the missing flagstones on the right that deny the Dungeoneer a completely safe path. And this time the exit is also locked. But since Leo has the key, all that's required is the timing to get him past the Scorpion. Once he's safely passed, they hold up the key and he exits.
So the Scorpion is still one of my favourite monsters. I just think it looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for taking a small animal and scaling it up. I know you said that the spider, the tarantula, didn't look very convincing, but they've got this ghostly effect on the Scorpion that makes it look kind of unique and kind of uncomfortable.
And the jerkiness of the movements even kind of sells it as well, even though it's mainly down to limited animation techniques. They do kind of go a bit overboard with the sizing up of small animals, though. It kind of comes to a head in later series when Hordris appears as a giant kitten. It almost gets to the point where they're actually parodying themselves.
This room is good, though, and it gets a real workout in this series. It's called Snake on David Rowe's website, so I tend to call this room Snake. And it is chopped up and cut together in so many other rooms.
It's quite amazing how the elements of so many rooms are reused.
Where am I?
Right, you're sort of walking along a cliff edge, and it's like sort of a cave.
It's the good old ledge crossing. Nothing to see here until...
Stoppings, please, stoppings!
Keep going, for goodness sake, is that pesky Olaf, and you've no gold to give him?
Yeah, a heavily armoured Swedish chef appears. And this time Treguard panics and says that they've got no gold to give him, so they hastily run in the opposite direction, which I think is the correct response to Olaf.
I love Olaf. The character is such an insensitive stereotype, but I still love him.
To be honest, being a parent, this is not the most objectionable Olaf that I've encountered.
No. Grant him his wish and light a fire. It's down to Tom Carroll being so good in this role. We go straight through Ledge Crossing 2 and on to Ledge Crossing 3.
Yeah, it's weirdly transitionless. There's no boundary between these three rooms.
I think the idea is to present the fact that this is one huge cavern.
And what have we here then? A dungeoneer. Hello, matey. My name's Motley. Woo! What's your hurry then?
Stoppings!
Oh, I can guess.
Motley asks Olaf what he's after, and Olaf replies that he's after the lootings and the pillagings, and of course the bonkings and the tonkings on the head. Love it. He whacks himself on the head, and you hear the broadsword sound. Dong.
Yes, yeah, the star appearance from Broadsword Television.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the lootings and the pillagings. And the bunkings and the tonkings on the head, of course. Orders is the orders, you know.
Oh, don't I just? Come on, youngster. Let's see what you got. Here you are, bacon features. And a boner bit of lootings it is too. This is what we calls a cheer me up. Cop hold of this.
Motley takes the folder that Leo is holding and throws it to Olaf, telling him that it's what's called a cheer me up. Olaf catches it and it starts laughing at him.
That's a natural reaction.
I'm not thinking I'm liking this. Stoppings, I want him to stop now.
Confused, Olaf runs off with the folder. He doesn't think to just let it go. Folly sends Leo on his way, telling him that the first step is the dance.
Who sends Leo on his way?
Motley sends Leo on his way, telling him the first step is the dance.
I think the other night Martin described him as Casper the Key with legs. But I like Motley. He doesn't have that horrific Woody Woodpecker laugh, and maybe he's just more emblematic of Nightmare for me, having joined later.
Me and Mr. Adoni do disagree quite heavily on Motley. I find him irritating but fun, whereas Mr. Adoni just finds him irritating. We are united in our opinion on Casper the Key, though.
What I'm interested in this scene is that it seems they could have chosen either item from the clue room as long as they got the key. Because Gold would have bribed Olaf. But then would they have got Motley's clue about the steps? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely that they wouldn't have been able to get anything from Motley.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a large oblong chamber, and along the walls on both sides of you there's two doors. And in the middle of these two doors...
Oh, that wall appears to be moving, and that reminds me of a message you didn't quite receive.
Oh, yes, it's the great court of the catacombs. But listen up, it's different this time. 'Cause you see, it's the thing, the far wall is closing in and making the space more confined.
The Corridor of the Catacombs jingle was my favourite jingle.
The team wastes no time in getting Leo out via the door on the right. That's all I can really say to that one.
Yeah, I do like that they've come up with an actual threat. The moving wall is a great indicator to hurry up.
And we said in the previous podcast, it seems like that's what they wanted to do in the first place.
Ah, yeah. Maybe they weren't quite ready to do it, hadn't got the rendering worked out.
Yeah, I do still really like the skull version, though. That was genuinely frightening. That
yes,
sequence.
Yeah, you couldn't quite see what was after you, and that's a great way to scare someone.
Yeah.
Okay, stop. Sidestep right. Quick.
Where am I?
Right, you're in a room, and there's a railway opposite you.
Oh, gosh!
Oh.
Aren't you the one I was supposed to give the message to? I wasn't really expecting you. Well, it wasn't my fault, honestly. I was just about to tell you not to turn the wrong way at the moving wall when the ground jumped up and ate me. Wasn't at all nice either, I can tell you.
Coming out of the corridor, Leo has made it to the well room, which is where Melisandre fell to. After introducing herself, she offers Leo some food, which gets knapsacked. She tells Leo that the nice old gentleman who told her to warn Leo about the moving wall also said to tell him that the second step is the prayer. She then leaves the room. The team guide Leo towards the well, which has a large pike hovering menacingly above it. That pike is in the weapon and not the fish. They're adding Tim Child's mouse cursor quite a lot to just give a bit of life and give a bit of hurrying up. There's a theme of just adding little bits to keep the pace going, which I appreciate.
It's not explicitly said here, but I have a feeling that the nice old gentleman that is being referred to as Hordris. I can't see it being anyone else.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up when she said it, but I think you're probably right.
Possibly Merlin, I suppose, but I think by now Melisandre would know who Merlin was.
Now, that nice old gentleman who gave me the message about the moving wall also said to tell you... Now, what was it? Oh, yes, that's right. He said, tell them the second step is the prayer. Sounds silly to me, but that's what he said. Don't you think you ought to be going?
Okay, Leo, can you see the well?
Yeah.
Go in it and hurry up, there's an axe coming down in there.
Great. Where am I?
Right, you're in a room and you're standing on this sort of spinning wheel, and all around you there are doors.
Okay.
No, but what a spin we're in. This strange device is called the Spin Dizzy Team. How it works I cannot say, but its purpose is clearly to confuse and frustrate. Guide Leo to the edge and time his leap with care. I suggest one voice alone should do the guiding.
Good advice in Treguard here. Just one person do the guiding.
Yes. To be honest, it would probably be easier if that was consistent throughout the series, if there was just one advice.
Yeah. It's the Spin Dizzy again. The room appears at the start of every level 2 in the series. What do you think of the Spin Dizzy, David?
I know this as the place of choice from Series 5, I think. It's the same prop they use. And this is, again, sort of the next evolution of the Mills of Doom. And it's interesting that they're moving into using actual physical obstacles to augment the dungeon as well now. They had the level clue room stairs, and they had the drop into the draining pool earlier. But this is an actual turning device, and I cannot believe they put someone blindfolded onto it. It's ridiculously dangerous, and you can see him almost fall over even after he successfully exits. I already have a phobia of being dizzy, so I would have thrown up immediately.
I've used revolving stages without a blindfold, and they are difficult when you can see. For those who don't know, if you've ever been to Thorpe Park or one of the theme parks that has like a river rapids ride, and you've got that big revolving station that you need to step onto before you get onto the actual ride, it's quite unnerving stepping onto it. And imagine doing that blindfolded.
Yeah, my daughter Penny got me onto one of the things at the playground that's, you know, the rotating thing that's slightly unbalanced and it turns round and round and round, and it just gets faster as your weight moves it.
Oh, yes.
2 days later, I was debilitatingly dizzy. I collapsed onto a bed, couldn't focus my eyes because they kept on sliding to the right. I seriously thought I was going to die. So it's an interesting addition, but probably not something I would have appreciated personally.
There are skulls adorning doors 1, 2, 3 and 5, whilst the fourth door had a chalice over it, making it pretty clear which one the team should be aiming for. They very carefully time Leo's leap and get him through the correct door. I think it's deceptively difficult, this obstacle. You've got to take into account momentum.
Yes, momentum and the reaction time of your dungeoneer. Thankfully, this one was very attentive.
Jump.
Where am I?
Right, in front of you, there is 5 doors. And over one door is an axe. And behind these doors, seems to be someone walking around because you can see their feet.
Yeah. All right.
Warning, team, you must risk one peril, or another will surely overtake you.
After a very short, very red dwarf tunnel,
That is a red one!
Leo has arrived in the 5-door chamber with the giant's feet timing puzzle. There's another pike floating over 2 of the doors, which begins following him around the room. It comes down on his head just before he can exit, taking a chunk off his life force and sending it into the red. What was the point in that?
I think that was getting him no matter what happens, just to make the food in the next chamber seem a bit more urgent.
Olaf would have been very proud of the bonkings and the tonkings on the head. So yeah, the giant's feet, it's a new way of using an old room.
Yeah, and again, it's just a timing puzzle. It's interesting how many flavours of timing puzzle that they came up with. I wonder whose feet they are. Don't think as if you can identify.
Well, that's the thing. I did know. I cannot remember.
Wow, your level of knowledge of Nightmare is far beyond what I even realised.
Well, I have a feeling they were just like a production assistant or something.
Mm-hmm.
I say just a production assistant. It must have been such a cool job being a production assistant on Nightmare. But yeah.
Who's got the biggest feet? You'll do.
Right, go forward. Face. Right, get them going. Quick! Okay, Leo, can you see the steps?
Yeah.
Go down them. At the bottom is a table with some food on it.
Yeah.
Okay, come forward. Hurry up. Right, go to the left of the table, and it's on there. You see it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Caution now, members of the quest. Here is an oracle. Leo, to hear its words, you must turn and face it, close your eyes tightly, and raise the helmet of justice slightly above your head.
We're onto the level 2 clue room already.
Yeah, we're whipping through this.
And it's being used in the best way here. This is the only way that level 2 clue room should be used, with a haunting. We talked before about how this room is perfect for haunting, and today it's been occupied by the Oracle of Confusion. Zoe Lofton replaces Audrey Jenkinson as the Oracle in Series 3, and she does an equally sterling job in portraying the mystical being. This thing is frightening.
It is. It's so eerie and otherworldly. I was genuinely unsettled at 37 years old, the last time it appeared.
The makeup and the costume is a bit simpler this time around, but I think that helps in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And Zoe Lofton, I will go to bat for Zoe Lofton for pretty much everything. I think she's a great addition to the dungeon.
Yes, we don't get to see Zoe Lofton's portrayal of the Oracle because...
Hurry now, temporal disruption approaching. Oh dear, too late. And it's too late for you as well. Never mind, we'll just have to wait until time turns to see what turns up. Join us again soon for Nightmare. It's not real, of course. At least, I don't think so.
I think they're shaping up to be a good team.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've said, I really enjoy how active Leo is and how much he participates in the quest. They seem to have got things fairly together, apart from the disaster of navigation that was after the Brang She, but I would have been terrified at that stage anyway, so I'll forgive them.
The problem with having a really good team like that is it just shows how bad the previous team actually were.
It's quite a contrast.
To literally just walk him straight off a cliff. And just the fact that they didn't even need to change anything. He was going to the exit anyway.
Simon sidestepped to your left. Simon, can you just jump off that cliff over there?
And that's it for this episode. You can follow us on Twitter. We're at NightmarePod. If you want to support the podcast, we're NightmarePod on Patreon and Ko-fi. And speaking of Patreon, here's a shout out to Keepers of the Book of Quests, Peter Pulsford, and of course, David N. Rabbit.
Hooray for me.
Advisors, Benjamin Bloom, Peter Sidon, David Thompson, and Stuart Leatherland. And Dungeoneer Peter Corridge. You can support us on Patreon at Dungeoneer level or above to get your name mentioned in the podcast. Higher level perks also receive merchandise, have access to exclusive episodes, and if you pledge as a Keeper of the Book of Quests, we'll even offer you the chance to be a guest on the podcast.
Is that a new reward?
To be fair, we did offer you before we actually put that into place, didn't we?
I think you did, yeah.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk. And if you're looking for Temporal Discussion merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers, and other products, it's at nightmarepod.redbubble.com. And David is proudly wearing his Temporal Discussion t-shirt. Was that one you bought from the store, or was that one we sent to you?
You sent it to me, yeah. We've got the new Albion album featuring Treguard himself at albion.bandcamp.com. You can follow me on YouTube at David X Newton if you so choose to. I'm doing a run through of the Myst games after starting one of them to laugh at it and accidentally becoming a huge fan. If you follow my Patreon, David X Newton again on Patreon, then you can get up to Myst 4. Or up to Myst 3 is publicly available just now.
You can email us at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And just keep telling yourself it's only a podcast, isn't it?
And the pumpkin's on the tonking's on the head, of course.